So today we want to look at two things. The first part of the lecture will look at what we call the research process. Okay, if you want to undertake research, what processes must you go through for the research to be regarded as valid research? Okay. After that, we'll go to the second part, which will look at research ethics. What are the ethical dimensions that every researcher or research participant or research sponsor must take into consideration when conducting research? So, what do we aim to achieve? So first, by the end of the lecture, number one, you must be able to describe the phases of the research process. There are three main phases, and you should be able to describe each of the phases. Number two, you should be able to understand the role that theory plays in business research. Number three, you should be able to explain what constitutes valid research. And that's what we call the scientific method, how that can be brought to bear to ensure that research is conducted in a rigorous manner. So we call that the rigor of science. What are the elements that constitute valid research? Then lastly, you should be able to understand the role and importance of proposers. So at the end of the first part, you should be able to understand the components of a research proposal. And then I'll give you an assignment on research proposal. Yeah. Now, so what are the phases of the research process? There are three main phases. We have the formulation stage, the execution stage, and then the analytical stage, or the formulation phase, the execution phase, and then the analytical phase. Now, in terms of the phase one, which is formulation phase, there are a number of steps that have to be undertaken in this stage. This includes, first, you must confirm that there is the need for the research. In other words, you have satisfied yourself with the fact that there is some information, some data that you need, which is not currently available. For which reason, you must undertake research to be able to get that data and then be able to solve a problem. So there must be a confirmation of the need. This confirmation can come through an observation of your environment regarding what the problems are, what the challenges are. It can come out of practice. You are implementing a project or a program, and then an issue comes up, or your interaction with your customers. You have realized that the customers are demanding something which is not available. Okay? So that can confirm a need. It can also come out of market surveys. Okay? You've done some market surveys or some surveillance research to identify the need. So that can be established. Once that is established, you define a problem. The problem can be a real-life problem which you face at your workplace, a real-life problem you face in your society or country. It can be a problem regarding the literature, can be a problem regarding theory, can be a problem regarding method. It can be a problem cutting across all these. But by all means, you must identify a problem. Or it could just be that you want to replicate what somebody did. So you did a research, and I want to find out whether what you did is correct. So that's my problem. My problem is that I want to find out whether what you did is correct. So I need to get your data, the same data you got. I have to get it, use the same analysis and all. So we call that replication studies. Okay? So, yes, please. Yes.
For example, if I'm the kind of data impact of people, some of their customers, this might be kind of the mental aspect of their health, although it is financial, and not doing.
Yes, it then becomes what we call an interdisciplinary topic. It's between an intersection between the world of finance and psychology. And remember, we said that one of the qualities of business research is that it can be disciplinary. Okay, so in this case, it means that you may need some understanding of psychology, which is not what is taught in a mainstream finance class. So you need a psychology teacher, or you self-study psychology and then add it to your finance. But there would only be a problem if in your research you focus too much on the psychology and then you neglect what? The finance, because the finance is your main discipline. So you have to, it's a balancing act so that you find a way of pulling the finance and then the psychology together, and they will be at the middle. And that is actually a way that you can make a contribution in a field where knowledge is already saturated. Okay? In a saturated field, sometimes what you do is that you borrow from another discipline, or you cut across another discipline, pick something from there, and then enhance your discipline. So that is very good if you can do that. Yes. Yes. Will be what? Whatever the situation, you still need to explain the problem. Okay. So we have what we call the problem statement. One of the components of research proposal is problem statement. You can state the problem in one sentence, but you still need to explain the circumstances that make it a problem. In other words, you are providing grounds for the problem. Because what you have stated there, somebody can just look at it and say that, no, but your problem is not a problem. So how do you convince the person that your problem is even a bigger one? You have to explain. So there has to be an exposition. So you must be capable of stating the problem in one sentence. And you must also be capable of explaining the problem in several paragraphs. Okay, so that has to be taken note of. So phase one also still involves literature review. When it comes to literature review, you can look at it in 3 levels. The first level will be conceptual review, where you are reviewing concepts, the meanings of the concepts. The second level is review of theory, where you are reviewing relevant theories related to the literature. The third level is review of empirical literature, where you are now reviewing published works on the topic. So 3 major levels are the conceptual level, theoretical level, and then empirical level. Then, having done that, you develop hypotheses and research objectives. or sorry, you develop questions, research questions. It's still a debate in the literature. Some say that research questions must come before objectives. Others say that objectives must come before what? Questions. But whatever, I'm not going to take part in that debate. Whatever the case must be, your study must include what? Research questions, and then what? Research objectives. But that's for thesis. But in terms of publishing a paper, when I'm publishing a paper, you will hardly see an explicit statement in the paper that will say that the objective of this research is this. Okay? So in published work, we have a language. It has its own nuances. Okay? So you have to state the problem. You can state the problem. You can state the research objectives without a novice researcher getting to know what the research objective is, what the research problem is. Okay? So there's academic writing is a science on its own. So you learn that with time. After that, you now specify hypothesis. Okay? And we'll come to hypothesis. You now make tentative statements which are not yet proven, but are testable. That's what we call hypothesis. They are tentative statements, not yet proven, but what? Testable. Very important. If your hypothesis is not testable, then it's not hypothesis. Okay? And we'll come to hypothesis proper in subsequent lectures. Then you formulate your research design. There are different types of research designs that you can adopt as a researcher. So at this stage, you can talk about your specific research design, whether you are doing what? A causal design, causal comparative design, descriptive design, etc., etc. You have to state that. Okay? We'll come to research design as a topic. So I'm not going into details. I'm just giving you the lowdown. Now, phase 2, execution. This is where you plan the data collection. Okay, so first, you must decide, how do I get people to interview? How many of them should be interviewed? How do I get the data from them? Do I use questionnaire? Do I use interview guide? Do I use CCTV cameras? Do I use the ANAS approach, where I hide the camera somewhere, you will not know, and then we'll be talking and I'm recording? Or I have to go and stay in the community and then live with them, take part in whatever they do, and then I collect my data. After data collection, you have to check the data for errors. So we have data entry process. You enter the data, usually in a spreadsheet, if it's a quantitative data. If it's recorded, sometimes you do transcription. But now there are a lot of new softwares and systems that we don't have a lot of transcription, physical transcription. So even those who do qualitative research, we are now encouraging them to move away from what? Manual analysis. Okay? So I don't want to ask you when you present your proposal, how you will analyze your research data, then you tell me that I'm going to do manual analysis. The world has since moved from manual analysis. Okay? Those days, I remember sometimes you just, those days, the undergrad, you pick the questionnaires and rule a long line. And then you enter the data on the questionnaire, that's your, on the paper, that's your computer. Then after that, you pick your calculator and you are doing calculations. No, that time is past. Okay? So we want to see you use computer software, whether you are doing qualitative or quantitative. Then, so you check for errors, you code the data. So there are technicalities in coding data depending on the type of data. Your questionnaires is the beginning of coding data. So the questionnaire itself has to be properly numbered and put into sections. Okay? Once you have numbered the questionnaires well, you now create columns and rows in the spreadsheet that can tell what each part of the questionnaire, how they are translated onto the spreadsheet to become variables so that you can use them for analysis. Otherwise, you can give your data to somebody. I've had encounters who want to the field to collect data, given to research assistants to enter, and they have entered the data. You can't use the data for anything because they don't know how to code the data. And if the coding process fails, you can't do the analysis. You have to start all over again. Then you have to store the data. We find students using this as an excuse. You say that, oh, I saved my computer crashed. So because of that, I lost my data. That's why you are not seeing me. Okay? So you have to find a way of storing the data. We have cloud storage systems. We have external hard drives. We have pen drives. Make sure that work that is valuable to you, sometimes you just send it to your own self through email. You store it or send it to somebody else. Okay, sometimes when there are some pieces of information, if I want to send it, okay, I will not tell you the secret. It's okay. I will not tell you. Okay, so find a way of storing what? Information. Otherwise, you can just put all the data in the computer, and by the time you wake up to analyze the data, the computer has crashed. You have no data again. And that can take you back several years in your work. So data storage, very important. Then the last phase, analysis. The analytical phase involves analyzing the data. So you have to ask yourself, is it qualitative data or quantitative data, or a mixture? If it's quantitative data, what method of analysis do I need to use? Do I use regression analysis? Do I use principal component analysis? If it is qualitative data, what qualitative software do I need in order that I can analyze it, and so on and so forth. Then it is one thing to analyze the data. It's a different ballgame when it comes to interpretation. A lot of people can analyze data, but they can't interpret. There is a lot of message in the analysis results. But if you are not careful, the results will be saying A, but you are saying that it is saying B. So you have to be careful that when you are interpreting, ensure that your results, your data, and your interpretation are at the same level. Nowadays, we are so blessed, or we have been made to become lazy. There are a lot of tools online that if you put the results there, it will tell you the meaning, okay, what the results means. You can add it. Of course, they make mistakes. You can add it to what you know from the textbooks and from the papers, and then form your own what? Understanding of the results. I'm not saying that the interpretation that is given you from the software, you just cut it and come and paste and then format and send to your supervisor. No. You learn from what the machine has told you. And then, based on the theory, based on the textbooks, based on the journal articles, now write your own informed what? Interpretation. That's very important. Then, when you have done the interpretation and made inferences. So there's interpretation and there's inference. Inference is the answer to the question, and so what? Okay, when you have interpreted that, okay, human capital has what? A positive effect on GDP growth. That's interpretation. The question is, and so what? That's now what? The inference at the level of what? Inference. Okay? So then you can say that from this, you can then say that human capital is very important for what? Economic growth. So that's an inference you have made. Okay? But then also, when it comes to the statistics, we have two levels of statistics. We have descriptive statistics and then inferential statistics. Descriptive statistics will be dealing with the mean, median, standard deviation, variance, and all those things. Those are descriptive statistics. Then we move, so that is the most basic level. So when you do your research and you are using pie charts, histogram, frequencies, what you are doing is descriptive statistics. You need to move to the next level, which we call inferential statistics, where you now begin to establish whether the changes that you are seeing are due to chance or they are actually statistically significant. In a particular situation, you can see that there are key differences, but that difference may just be due to chance. Okay, so without becoming too mathematical, suppose that you have a regression equation. So y is income. Okay, so this is income. Then the intercept is 0.09. Then there's this variable that I talked about, which is human capital. So let's give it H, human capital. It has a coefficient of 0.04. Okay, so when I see this equation, this 0.04 tells me the impact of human capital on what? Income. So technically, the interpretation is that if human capital increases by 1 unit, the income will increase by 0.04 units. So that's how we interpret it. Okay. Now, the question is, this 0.04, is it statistically significant or it is just due to chance? Because chance can also cause things to happen. It can just happen that it's by chance. So how we test this is at the realm of inferential statistics. So we have to test whether this is due to chance or indeed in real life and in policy making, this is statistically significant. So what we do statistically is that we get the standard error. For when you run this regression, to give you the standard error. So if you divide the standard, this one, by its corresponding standard error, and the test there is what we call the T statistic. And that will tell me whether this is significant or not. If the T statistic and the corresponding p-value is, for instance, 0. So here I'm talking of p-value. P-value is used to determine level of significance. The same based on the T statistic. Okay. So if the p-value is 0.00, it means that this 0.04 is statistically significant. So we cannot ignore it. So policymakers can implement policies based on this result. If, however, the p-value is somewhere like 0.100, it is not statistically significant. Okay? As we progress in the lecture, you understand some of these things, but I'm just trying to explain. It is not significant, which means that this 0.04 we are seeing is due to chance. So policymakers should not worry themselves about this result. It has no practical relevance. So that is to tell you that you can do statistical analysis at two main levels: descriptive level, which is the lowest level, and then inferential, which is a much higher level. Even the inferential, we have different degrees of inferential statistics, but that will come as you advance in your learnings. Some examples of problems that are researchable was, as I said, a problem has to be researchable. So for instance, if I say, how do price and quality rate on customers' evaluation of products? In other words, how do price and then quality influence the evaluation of customers regarding a particular product? It's researchable. Okay, so I can test this. How is the effect of participative budgeting on performance as moderated by control systems? Okay, it's researchable. How does improved automation affect greater asset investment per dollar of output? The finance people. Okay, so this is a finance question. Has a new packaging affected the sales of the product? As a marketing question. Okay? To what extent does the organizational structure and type of information system account for the variance in the effectiveness of managerial decision, HR? Okay? And so on and so forth. Okay? So the research question should then be clear and concise. Okay? As we have here. A lot more research questions. Okay? When you are conducting research, one important thing to note is what we call the unit of analysis. Research can be conducted at different levels. If I enter into a house, I have different units of analysis. The whole house, which we call the household, can become a unit of analysis. The household head can become a unit of analysis. The woman in the house can become a unit of analysis. The children in the house can become my what? Unit of analysis. So the same thing when you go to an organization. The organization itself can become unit of analysis. So if I want to know the performance of banks, I wouldn't be bothered about the individual workers in the bank. I need bank level what? Information. So the bank becomes the unit of what? Analysis. But if I want to know the satisfaction, level of satisfaction of bank what? Workers, then the bank workers will become what? My unit of what? Analysis. Okay. So sometimes somebody presents the research, then you ask them, what is your unit of analysis? And they start scratching their head. Okay? The unit of analysis is then the most basic element of your research project, which can be the same or different from your unit of observation. So you should be able to distinguish between unit of analysis and then what? Unit of observation. Okay? The unit of observation is the individual from which you will solicit what information for the research. I can have the household as my unit of analysis, but the household head as the unit of observation. Okay, because if I want to know something about the house, I have to what? Get that from what? The household head. Okay. So take note of the differences. Then we have what we call key informants. These are usually people that have some experience or knowledge in a particular area or field. And these people can be relied upon to give information. So they are usually not too many. We usually don't do too many key informant interviews. Because usually we extract qualitative information from them because they have some, so the chiefs, if you go to a community, the chiefs, the opinion leaders, they are the key informants, yes. Of course, the key informant basically is one of the units of observation. In other words, you are collecting data from them. Okay, but the key informant may not necessarily be the unit of analysis. So if I want to get information at the bank level, I may just need to talk to the bank manager, who is a key informant. But the information I'm getting from him is about the entire bank and not about him. Okay, so I'm having my unit of observation as the bank manager, but my unit of analysis is the bank. Okay, so take note of that. Theory and science. Theory and science. Now, when you come to academia, theory is very important. One of the knockout punches that you can be given as a scholar is for you to present your work, and they will tell you that your work lacks theory. That one is a technical knockout. Yes, because the basis for scientific knowledge is theory. Okay? So you are either testing an existing theory, or you are building on existing theory, or you are developing a new theory. So if you are not doing any of these, then you are in trouble. Okay? So you are just presenting stories, but not in terms of the epistemology, you are zero. Okay? Because no valid knowledge can come from. So what then is theory? So we say that theory has to do with systematic statements. And these statements can be what we call law-like generalizations. So they look like laws. Most theories are crafted in terms of laws. Okay? So you can have the law of demand, which will say what? The higher what? The price, the lower what? The quantity demanded. Ceteris paribus. Okay? So that looks like a law. Okay? Stated as a law. And that law is a theory. That theory did not come about by somebody just eating some banku in some evening and then waking up and then it will start chanting it. No. It has been based on what? Research. Years of research. They go to US, do the research, it's the same. They move to UK, it's the same. They come to Ghana, it's the same. They move to Nigeria, the outcome is the same. Then it becomes what? A theory. So one good thing about one quality of theories are that they are universal or near universal. They are universal. Okay. So we say that they are law-like, can be law-like generalizations that can be tested empirically. In other words, you can embark on a journey to disprove or to confirm a theory. If a theory cannot be tested, then it's no theory. Okay? So, therefore, theories become valid and fertile grounds for research. Okay, so when you see a theory, the theory is pointing you to a research opportunity, because you can test it. Okay. So testability is important. And when we talk about law-like generalizations, they are basically laws or sub-laws that will tell you what is supposed to happen under some specified situations or circumstances. Okay, so I just talked about the theory of demand. Okay, so the higher the price, the what? The lower the quantity demanded. So what does it mean in terms of what we should do? Okay, and what does it predict? It means that if you are into business, okay, and then you raise the price for particular commodities of given characteristics, you are going to reduce the quantities that you sell. So your money will now come more from the high price and not from demand. Okay, so that will be how you are able to earn profit or not will depend on the nature of the commodity. We have different categories. We have goods that are necessities. Okay, for necessities, to a very large extent, even when you increase the price, it will not affect demand so much because we need it to survive. You increase petrol prices, you cry, but you still need fuel to buy. You have to move your car, you have to move your motorbike. You have to buy. Even if you have to buy 10 cedis, and then it takes you one way, then when you are coming, you buy another 10 cedis. You have to buy. Okay? The same thing with the various necessities, the food we buy and all that. You go and to buy tomatoes, see that this should not be how much you should be buying tomatoes, but you need it in order to prepare your life food. Okay, so you buy. Okay, you may reduce the quantity that you buy, but it only means that you frequent the market. So what you have bought will just finish in a twinkle of an eye, and then you have to go back to the market. Okay, so theories give us the fuel. So these are links to some theories that you can look at so that you understand how theories are used in management, in finance, entrepreneurship, procurement, management, information systems. Yeah? Yes. Yes. We have a lot of that in economics. Okay? They can be there thinking even the same year. Okay, so the solo growth model, both Solo and Swan, they were in different countries doing research, and they both arrived at the same thing. So if you go to the literature proper, we call it the Solo-Swan model. Okay, Solo was sitting somewhere doing his research. He discovered it. Swan was also doing his research independently. He also discovered it. So it's Solo-Swan model, but I don't know whether by virtue of where solo comes from, in the end, the theory has been labeled the solo growth model. Sidelining swan. In life, that's how it is. Sometimes you both make contribution, but only one person will be recognized. So that we have a lot of theories like that, okay, that are developed independently and sometimes jointly. Sometimes they collaborate. Okay, Mundell and Fleming, for instance, McKinnon and Shaw. McKinnon and Shaw, different locations, different universities, but the same theory. Okay? Modigliani and Miller, of course, they did it jointly, and so on and so forth. Why is theory important? Number one, theory is the fuel of research. Okay? If your research has no fuel, no theory, it has no fuel. And for that matter, it cannot catch fire. In other words, nobody will recognize your research. A good researcher is one who is built on theory, number one, before practice. We see that a lot of people, they go straight to the practice because the theory is the hard part. People don't like it. Okay? When I start teaching you deep theories, a lot of you, your faces will change. It will change. But that's what you need. A true scholar is built on theory. Then from theory, you now move to what? Practice. But we see that a lot of the youth these days, they want to jump the theory part and move straight to what? Practice. And then that's why you are seeing a lot of lapses in the system. So theory provides the basis for what we call normative decision making. Okay? If you want to make a decision as a business manager, theory provides you guidelines. So we just talked about the law. If you are a business owner and you know the law of demand and supply, it gives you guidelines as to how you should price your commodities. Okay? And we are giving, so for instance, some examples. So an example of a normative has to do with the relationship between price and then supply. Okay? So we are saying that prices should be increased when the demand is stronger than what? Supply. Okay? And we see that if there's we just see a market out there, you see that people are rushing to buy. You see that those who come in the evening, by the time they get there, the price is now different from the price that it was sold in the morning. Because the sellers initially did not have an idea of what? The demand. But as people throng to the place, the price has changed. Sometimes both the price and then the quantity will change. Okay? If you've ever bought wache in a long queue, okay, the wache seller is also looking at the queue and then also the quantity of wache that is available to determine how much should be served by each person at any given price. So it will be changing. Okay, so as the food is reducing, at the same price, the quantity and even the quality is reducing. Okay, so those things work in practice. So theory also helps you to narrow down what should be studied. So I usually advise my students that when you are doing your research work and you are doing literature review on theory, you don't need to review all the theories in the world. Only focus on theories that are related to your topic, number one, Number two, theories that you will use in your work. I can have 5 financial theories, but I'm using only 1 or 2. I have to state explicitly that this is the theory or set of, these are the set of theories I am adopting for my work, so that I don't move around as if I don't know what I am about. So it's very important. Now, you can make decisions based on theory or based on intuition. A lot of managers make decisions based on intuition rather than theory. Okay? Okay, this is how I did it last year and it worked. This is how this person did it and it worked. Or this is the approach we've been adopting and it's working. But not based on what the findings are saying. So even when they have very few organizations, when they commission research, then they want to use the findings from the research. Sometimes it's just done to fulfill all righteousness. It's mostly the international organizations. When they commission a research, they really are interested in learning from the research. Okay? But we want to change the narrative so that management decisions are based on theory and not on intuition. Okay? Because intuition can fail you, but less so regarding the use of theory. Then we have what we call behavioral learning theory. And this one is talking about the fact that your conditioning, in other words, your exposure, your interactions, and all that can provide a reinforcement for the changes that occur in terms of your behavior and all that. Okay? So for instance, if we look at compensation and human behavior, okay, how human beings respond to what we call incentives. There are some people, when their salary is increased, they don't even celebrate. Or they will not even go and say thank you to their boss. It will not increase their work output. Whether you increase it, you don't increase, is none of their business. But there are some people, when you increase their salary, for every day throughout the next 2 weeks, they will be coming to say thank you. And then, if they were coming late, they will start coming early. If they were closing early, they will start staying. They will increase their work output in response to the incentive that is provided. So as a manager, you must understand your workers and see which ones of them respond to incentives and which ones do not respond to incentives. So understand what they respond to. Because if you think that this worker is lazy because he's not paid well, and then you increase the pay and they are still lazy, you have wasted your money. So you must have a firm grasp at that. Okay? So you can have a theory that is descriptive. Descriptive in the sense that it will just provide how things are. In other words, it will just tell you, give an explanation of how things are, the state of nature, okay, of things. Not necessarily the how, but how, just the state of being or nature of the thing. So we're talking about using that for rational decision making. Generally, mainstream economics and finance assumes that the human being is rational. In other words, you take decisions that are in your best interests. So by nature, we then conclude that the human being by nature is greedy. Okay, you want to take care of yourself first before what? The next person. Okay. So that we are saying that based on the theory, then our decisions, which are well informed, should then be based on theory, which will provide basis for explanation and prediction. Because the theory will tell you under this circumstance, so if you increase the price, this is how it will affect demand. If you reduce costs, this is how it will affect what? Supply. Okay, so the theory provides you the basis for making good decisions. Okay. Scientific method, the so-called scientific method. In the past, this has been the golden rule for research. That any research that does not follow the scientific process is no research. So research, properly so-called, was then supposed to follow this wheel. First, you start by observation. Okay? Could be observing environment, observing human beings, observing the happenings at the workplace. When you observe, you discover. So observation leads to discovery. When you discover something, then you now learn from it and develop what? Hypothesis. In other words, you are developing tentative statements, which you will test to verify that they are correct. Then, often from the hypothesis, you collect data. The data collection process may involve experimentation. So you are conducting an experiment and collecting data. Then from there, you do data analysis, draw conclusions. Based on the conclusions, theories emerge. Then those theories will then go back and feed into further research. Can lead to the development of new theories after going through this wheel again. So the process never stops. So that one of the canons of theory is what we call the law-like generalizations, which I talked about. And here we are providing examples of what law-like generalization could be, and then the corresponding analysis in terms of further hypotheses we can test regarding that. So the research question will basically give a general proposition. So for instance, is gender related to job outcomes? Okay, and there can be several measures of job outcomes. Can be satisfaction, can be output, measured in various from whether sales, in terms of sales, in terms of profit and all that. So your research question can be, is gender related to job outcomes? Then you move it from the research question stage into hypothesis. And by hypothesis, as I mentioned earlier, you now try to make a formal statement that is unproven. But your aim is that you will move on to prove it in the research process. So we call it a tentative supposition. Okay? So it's just made in the meantime. But at the end of the research, you will determine whether it moves from tentative to permanent, where it becomes theory. Okay? So we can craft is gender related to job outcomes in the form of hypothesis as female service employees report higher job satisfaction than male service employees. So you are saying that in the service industry, female workers are more satisfied than what? Male workers. This is not proven yet. To prove it, what do? You collect data from what? Female employees in the service sector and male employees also in what? Service sector. Take note of that. Because you don't go and take female employees in service sector and go and take male employees in industry. And then you compare. No. You'll be misfiring. Okay? So these are examples of research questions and then how you can turn them into hypotheses. So if I give you research questions, you should be able to turn them into testable hypotheses. Okay? The relationship between theory and the key elements of research. Your research questions lead to hypothesis development. From hypothesis, you test. When the hypothesis is upheld, then it is on the way to becoming theory. Okay, so that's how. Then, from the theory, you can formulate new research questions and hypotheses. Then the cycle continues. Okay. In other words, the key to theory development is to have clear hypotheses and clear research questions. And then your testing apparatus must also be on point. Because if at the testing stage, there's a problem, you cannot arrive at a strong theory. Now, one of the terms or terminologies that quantitative people use to worry qualitative researchers is rigor. Yes.
How do you find out if your research question is testable? How do you test?
Yes, to find out whether your research question is testable, first, you must see whether your research question is examining relationships. Okay, so if your research question only contains one variable, then it means it's not testable. It must at least have one, two, or more variables in there. And you can check from the research questions that we give as example. Take the first one. Are company share prices affected by what? Unexpected capital investment announcements? At least we have two variables there. Number one, share prices. Number two, capital investment announcements. So it's testable. Number two, how does advertising influence sales? Advertising, sales. Is sales territory size related to customer service ratings? What are the variables there? Sales what? Territory size, and then what? Customer service. So that can give you a clue as to whether or not your hypotheses are what? Testable. And to test the hypothesis, you need basically a number of tools. Most of them are statistical tools, which we are not going to. I'm not going to take you. Fortunately, we didn't make this research methods and statistics. So there's the statistics part where you can test the hypothesis based on the research question. You can determine what set of statistical tools that you need in order to test them. Sometimes it can just be regression. Sometimes it can just be correlation analysis. Sometimes it can just be chi-square. Sometimes it can just be ANOVA, and so on and so forth. Okay. So the research question will determine what tool to use. So as I was saying, one of the terms that quantitative people use to play down on qualitative research was what we call rigor. Rigor. By rigor, they mean that you have gone through the scientific process to the fullest. So data collection, problem formulation, hypothesis testing, you have collected your quantitative data. You have subjected them to modeling, quantitative modeling. You have tested your p-values and all that and have arrived at a conclusion. We say that there's rigor in it. Okay? And to do that, of course, that's not to say that right now, because right now there are a lot of quantitative studies that are also rigorous, a lot of qualitative studies. So I must emphasize that. Now, usually, when you set up your hypothesis, make sure that all the variables you need from the hypothesis, they are captured in your questionnaire. Because we have a situation where students will tell you, oh, say, can I collect data? Then I'll ask them, what is your methodology? So you've done chapter 1 and chapter 2. You have no methodology and you want to collect data. What model are you going to use for the data analysis? You don't have it. So what will happen is that if I'm soft, I'll say, okay, go and collect data since you are disturbing me. You go and collect the data. They come, objective 1, sales. Where is the sales variable? It's missing. It's not in the data. Objective 2, share prices. Where is the variable? It's missing. You can change. We don't change objectives to match data. That's a crude way of doing research. Okay? It's a crude way. It means that you decided to jump one of the research processes. Okay? It's giving you a problem. And if you change it, the likelihood is that you will not have a rigorous research. Because you are not just trying to fit into the data, not into the problem. Because the objective was based on your research problem. So now that you are shifting, what is the new research problem? So you now have to go and look for a research problem. Won't it be too late? So by then your colleagues would have graduated. Okay, and your supervisor will now see you as a nuisance. Because your colleagues are gone, new students have come and you are adding to them. Okay, so it's always good to be systematic. So do your introduction, chapter 2, literature review, chapter 3, methodology, spend time on it. And this is where I usually see that students have a problem, methodology. How to design the study, how to determine sample size, the sampling approach is a big problem. And in particular, the model for analysis. Until I see you clearly specify your model, I can't allow you to go and collect data. Remember, we talked about data considerations earlier. When you come out with a research topic, ask yourself, is data available? If no, is it possible to collect it? If yes, you proceed. If it is still no, abandon it. So there's no way that you can go through this process, then at the end of the data is not available. You have to do your background checks. Even though the cost of the data, I told you one of my students, the cost of the data is not his problem. Fortunately, we are just at the topic formulation stage. He has expressed interest to abandon that topic and change to one that is friendly on his packet. Okay, so we can get it rectified at that level so that it doesn't proceed and get to a point that they will tell him to bring $300 and he can't find $300. Okay. So When you collect your data, you now use the data to do the analysis to find out whether your hypothesis is supported or not. If the data and the prediction are consistent, in other words, the data and then the prediction based on your hypothesis align, then you say that your hypothesis is supported. So your theory is generated. If, however, the data and the prediction are inconsistent, in other words, you are saying that female service workers have better satisfaction, but you have found out that it is rather the males that have what? Better satisfaction. It means that your prediction and your data are what? Inconsistent. And for that matter, your hypothesis is not supported. Yes, please. Yes. Number one, what is the capacity of that individual or source to generate quality data? So for instance, if the data I'm just using is just a collect student who has gone to collect it, it will be difficult to convince your supervisor that the data is good. You trust him, but your supervisor may not trust your friend. Okay? If it is data from, say, statistical service, it's okay, you have no problem. World Bank, IMF, you have no problem. Generally, it's acceptable, even though we have people who still criticize data from those sources. But on the whole, those are accepted to be quality data. So you have to look at the credibility of the data source. Then you also consider the variables they have collected, and then their scale of measurement. Very important, because sometimes you get data, but there is no key to how the data, each variable is defined and measured. So I've gotten into a situation, somebody sent me a report to results to write so that I will collaborate. The variables are there, but what do they mean? So he had to send me a key defining each variable and how each variable is measured. So it's not just downloading the data. When you download the data, also download what we call the metadata that contains the description and measurement of the variables. Because one of the questions that will come will be, how are your variables measured? If you fumble there, then it means that you have no research. Okay? So you have to be clear about that. Yes. I'm coming. You did what? But that one is expected. If the variables are different, why should the results be the same? The results should not be the same because they are different. Yes, sir. Yes. So it depends on the discipline. Okay. So for instance, those of us who do the more quantitative ones, you have a Bloomberg, Financial Times, you have a Statistica. There are a whole lot of them. There are so globally reputable institutions or businesses. Their data is also regarded as credible. And there are actually organizations like CompuStats and BankScope, the name has changed a bit, that are just data-based organizations. They collect data and sell. Okay? So that And usually to also get an idea of whether it's credible or not, you have to run the name over your supervisor. That I've seen this source. They say they have A and B data. Do you think they are credible? So I remember I used data from a World Economic Forum, and somebody had a problem with it because he doesn't believe in their ideology. So he feels that their data has a problem. But I didn't have a problem. I have no ideological leanings. I don't care about ideology. I'm just a researcher. So I was able to convince him that for the purpose for which I was using the data, it was all right, and there was no problem with it. Yes.
Go along with your experiment.
Your theory is established.
What about the other way around?
If the other way around is disputed, several ways forward. One of the ways forward is the way back. You have to go back and check all the stages of the research process to be sure that they are correct. Otherwise, you are in trouble. Because one of the things you will face in the academia is that Adam Smith, who is known to be the father of economics, he says that this is the law. And then your grandparents, they didn't even go to Q1. Then you are saying that there's something happening which is contrary to what Adam Smith said. They will ask you, who are you? Who are you to challenge Adam Smith? What's your weight in academia? Okay, so you have to go back and cross-check. So that if you cross-check and you see that you have done everything correct, then you still have to boldly state your claim, knowing that your claim is going to be subjected to scrutiny. If it is found that along the way you faulted, then your credibility will be affected as a researcher. So we are usually very careful to produce knowledge that is contrary to the status quo. If you must produce knowledge contrary to the status quo, then you must satisfy yourself that you have fulfilled all righteousness. In other words, phase 1, formulation is on point. Stage 2, execution is on point. Stage 3, analysis is on point. Then you can beat your chest and say that this is what I have also found. Yes, and then people will now be quoting you. And that's how grounds are broken in academia. If you can show that what you have discovered is a new theory, then we can name the theory after you, or you will name it after yourself. Okay, and everybody will be picking it. So that's why it's not easy to make a name in academia, because there are a whole lot of eyes on you, not eyes in Ghana alone, all over the world. The academic research is all over. So you can't go and publish in a particular corner and say that you are an academic. No. It has to be on the internet, and anybody everywhere who wants to read it and know whether you are a good scholar or not can easily access you. Okay, so that's how it works. What is good science? In other words, what is good research? Okay. These are the qualities of good science. Number 1, it is empirical, which means that it can be tested against reality. In other words, you can collect data based on the science and then test it. is replicable. In other words, a different person can pick your methodology, can pick your research instruments, and do the same research and get the same or similar results. So it should not be that you go and do a research in a particular area when I also go with your method to do that same research, I get different results. Then there's a problem. It's possible that your sampling was biased. So if your sampling was biased, then there will be differences in the results. So a good research has to be replicable. So right now in the academia, because of the fact that there's an increase in the number of retractions, before I came here, I just saw an email, a message regarding how one of the top journal publishing houses had to retract a research work that is based on cancer research because that research was fabricated. People sit in their rooms and they produce research. And those research are published in top science journals. And policies are made on those fabrications. Okay? So to do that, to be able to confirm whether a research is genuine or not, it must be replicable. If you produce your findings, I should be able to follow the methodology you have described and arrive at the same conclusion that you arrive at. If that is not possible, then either me or you has gone wrong along the way. So that's the issue of replicability. Just a minute. Remember, in science, we talk about what? Representativeness of sample. So for instance, if you claim that you have conducted a research in this class, and you have used a scientific approach to sample 20 people at random in this class, if I also come to this class, I don't need to choose the same 20 people. I just also need to sample one at random. And the results, no, it's not. The views will be, the variety in the views should reflect in the same 20 people that you interview, just as I have interviewed. You understand that? So if you interview 20 people, some will have one view, some other people will have a different view. The proportion in those that have different views in your sample should be the same as the proportion in the group that I have interviewed. That's proper science. In other words, sampling is that we should have taken the entire class, but the entire class is too big. We pick a representative number so that if we pick people at random, scientifically, the responses should not differ much based on the science. No, if it differs, then there's a problem. If it differs, then there's a problem in either your sampling or my sampling. It cannot be different significantly. So for instance, you may arrive at the age to be, say the average age to be, say 28. My age should also be around 29 or 27, but mine should not move to 40 something. Otherwise, there's a problem. You understand that? Yes, I'll come. Yes.
The effect of crop production or women access to, let's say, farmland, and its effect on the crop production. they use a particular location. So the particular research, let's assume it's conducted 20 years. Then another person is trying to give or confirm. Is it not possible that the respondent that contributed that particular research at that time, there would have been a perception about human access to land and individuality access. So you will not get maybe the required or the same response as the earlier research. Not possible.
Then you are not doing replication. Because then why it will not be replication is that the time is different. And with time, things change. Cultural values change over time. So what used to happen in Dagbang 100 years ago doesn't happen today. So research work that was done concerning Dagbang, if you do the same thing today, you get different results. It means that I said that the methodology is what? The same. Okay, the methodology is the same. So in other words, the time period that you use is the same. Okay, the time period is the same. So we can, time period shift can change replicability. So certain times, you may embark on replication studies to see whether there's a time shift. Okay, so what we are talking about, 1980, women's access to land. 2024, women's access to land. Has it changed? So you can use the same methodology in a replication manner, but you are open to the fact that the results can change due to what? The time factor. So that one, we don't expect the results to be the same. Okay, so the results you get, which brings difference, can then be attributed to what? Time. Evolution over what? Time. So apart from being empirical, replicable, and then it must also be analytical. Okay? In other words, the researcher takes due care in measuring all the variables, takes due care in analyzing the results, takes due care in interpreting the results, and addressing research questions in a systematic manner so that there is no disconnect from introduction to conclusion. Then it's theory-driven. A good research or good science is based on sound theory. Right? What's that? Okay? So it must be based on existing body of knowledge. If you chance upon an area where there is no theory, what you do is to veer into related theory. You can have no theory, but you may have related theories. Okay? So you can review on related theory. Then it must also be logical. And then lastly, rigorous, meaning that all effort is made to reduce error. It will be difficult for research to be error-free. But what we try to do as researchers is to minimize error to the barest minimum. How to reduce error to the barest minimum. That's what we seek to do. Okay. So if I ask you what is good science, it's the same as asking what constitutes good research. Okay, you go to exam, you see what constitutes good research, and you say that I didn't teach you. Meanwhile, I will not bring what I have not taught, but I may use a different language. Okay. So, which means that a good research is empirical, replicable, analytical, theory-driven, logical, and then rigorous. Yes. Then we talk about management decision making, whether it is based on evidence or based on intuition. Okay? But one of the cardinal principles of good model building is what we call parsimony. Okay? Parsimony simply talks about the fact that if you can do it with few, why try to bother yourself doing it with many or with more? In other words, if you are study, you can achieve it with 3 variables in the model. Why do you add 10 variables? See? So we attempt to attain model parsimony. What are so now we are going to into research proposal, which is very critical. Research proposal. Now, if you want to do research, one of the things you must master is report proposal writing. Proposal writing. It will be difficult for you to get a woman to marry if you don't propose. Unless your father or mother marry for you. Okay? So you have to propose. It's the same with research. The girl can also propose. Mostly in advanced counties. I said mostly in advanced counties. It is rare in our situation. Okay? I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but it's rare. You see? Sure. Okay? So there's a need to learn how to write proposal. So one of the things you must learn, both theoretically and practically, is how to develop proposal. So after this lecture, I'm giving you an assignment. So you have to put, course rep is not here. Put yourselves into group, maximum 5 in a group. Then you write research proposal. I'll give you the guidelines. Okay. A research proposal identifies and defines a problem to be investigated. Okay. So it has direction. The problem to be investigated gives a research proposal a direction. That's why you have to be careful with the problem. Once you define the problem, the direction of the research is determined. You can't change it. You can't change again. Okay? If you have to change, you have to come and change the problem. Then it will outline the approach and the method the researcher will use. And then it will specify the deliverables if it is a project. So if it's a project, so let me say that we have research proposal for the purpose of pure research, and then research proposal for an organization or for a project. So when I'm writing a research proposal for a research funding, there's a way I write it. It's different from the donors will tell you the deliverables. They will tell you that we need this report, we need this, we need that, we need that. But if I am writing a research proposal on my own, the only deliverable is that I need a published paper. That's all. Okay? Just need a published paper. The paper should be published. That's all. Then there has to be a budget in most cases if it is a sponsored project. If it is still your own research, you can budget. And that's important because if you fail to budget, you may move on along the line. You realize that after all, you do not have the money to undertake the research. So it is usually good to cost it and to provide timeline. So one of the things my supervisor did when I was doing the research, my PhD was, from day one, he told me that the thing is in your hands. So give me a timetable of how you are going to conduct the research and when you want to finish, and I'll follow you. Okay, so in that realms, how early you finish is in your hands. Because you tell your supervisor that in April of 2025, I want to collect the data. Then April, May, June, you are nowhere to be found. It means that you are delaying what? Yourself on the project. So it is usually good to provide timeline for completion. What are the components of proposal? If you don't understand any component, you can ask questions. Because as I said, you are going to develop research proposal. First is the title of the research proposal. I must say that this is a rough guide, okay? Because depending on the sponsor, some sponsors have their own format. So they will tell you that your research proposal must follow this format. But this is a standard format. If the sponsor doesn't want this format, follow the sponsor's format. But if the sponsor doesn't give you a format, then you can use the standard one. First is the title. First is project title. If it is a project, if it is a research work, like your research will be research title or research topic. Abstract. The abstract gives a bird's eye view of what the research is about. So it will include a brief statement of the problem, research objective, methodology, expected findings, and then expected policy implications. Okay. If I read the proposal, I should be able to have a full view about your work. So sometimes a decision is making on your proposal just based on the abstract. Okay, so because sometimes the submissions are many. So, and you have to make a decision. So you just read the abstract. If it's not interesting, that's it. You don't, the remaining 15 pages is waste of time. So you must get the abstract right. From the abstract, you move to the background. Some will say introduction, okay? But we usually call it background. So the background will basically tell you the events that have led up to the proposal request. If it is a project proposal, okay? If it is a research proposal, it will give a background on the concepts, the trends that are at play as regards the research issue, putting them together. I'll talk about what the nature is in a subsequent lecture. Then, from there, you move to the problem statement and research objectives. You must then describe what problem or problems the research would solve. At the end of the research, what problem would have been addressed? Okay. if you cannot tell what problem will be solved at the end of the research, then the research is not necessary. So one of the questions you'll be asked when you come to present your research problem will be that, what problem will be solved by your research? And you should be quick to answer that. Then you move to strategy and data, basically your methodology issues, data collection. The data to be collected, how it will be collected and analyzed. Your modeling and all that. Okay? Then after that, you talk about expected outcomes. So basically, you just cast your research objectives in a positive light. That by the end of the study, you are expected to find A, B, C, D. That's all. You don't need to, there's no long talk here. Then your time schedule and then the budget will come. And then lastly, your capacity. Okay, they want to know who is behind the proposal. What you have written, which is so fantastic, does your qualification match what you have written? Do you have the capacity to conduct the research? So sometimes we call it statement of capacity. Okay, so this one, you need to do a lot of persuasion, pulling out all the research experiences you have done before. And for a lot of students, this is a big problem, because if they look back, the only research is dissertation. So not much experience. So in which case you may have to become a research assistant under the project rather than the lead researcher. Okay. But if it is an academic proposal that you are writing, you don't need this. You don't need to tell us we already have your qualification. That's why we have admitted you. So you don't need to state your capacity. Your capacity is established already. Okay? So for a number of projects, sometimes they even first start by asking you to send the CV before they ask you to submit the proposal. If they look at your CV and then they think that you are not fit, they will not even ask you to submit proposal. Okay? So that is very important. Yeah. So these are questions that you should go through to check yourself whether you were here or not. Okay, so what are the three phases of the basic business research process? Briefly explain each. Akoko. Okay. What roles or role does theory play in what? The basic research process. We said is the fuel for what? For research. What is the scientific method and how is it used in business research? Akoko. What are the characteristics of good science? Akoko. Why is the preparation of a written research proposal important? The same thing. Okay? And these are essay questions. The previous one was self-check to be sure that you are here. Then these ones you now think, okay, based on your being here. You see, is copying from where? Afternoon. Yeah.
But I'm working at the library. I'm actually researching correspondence service with register for the library, the virtual reference services. So I wanted to talk to them.
Talk to their course rep.
Hello, if you have a
Alright,
question,
so-
we can ask. Either unmute and ask, or
Even though
type
we've
it.
not, from my perspective,
And,
we've
Prof
not
will
achieved
read it.
our objectives. Yes, we've not achieved our objective. There was a part two, which is research ethics. So because of the delay in starting. Okay, so I'm hoping that next week we can. It's in, yeah, it's in. So next week we have to double up. Okay, thank you very much. So how do we proceed? Yes, yes, I know. So that one. Why not?
Doc, I have a question. Prof, I have a question.
There were.
Good afternoon, Prof. I have a question.
Yeah, ask your question.
Thank you very much. I would have wished if Prof would take us through how, at least one of the examples he gave, the standard research questions, how he developed, just take us through how you develop one. Thank you.
So he's asking how one can develop a standard research question. Okay. So one of the first approach to answering the question is how do you get research topic? Okay, how do you get the research topic? There are several sources of getting research topic. Number one, your supervisor. Okay? Supervisors have vast experience. As I'm here, research topics are bouncing on my head. Okay? They are bouncing on my head. So if you come to me and you say, okay, I'm interested in conducting research, I'll ask you, what are your interest areas? Okay? Because one thing is that what I'm interested in, you may not be interested in that. So I make sure that among my research areas, what you mention as what you are interested in coincides with one of the research questions that I have, then I can give that to you. Okay. So because I have been with research for years, there's a high likelihood that the research question would be what? Valid. Are we on? We are on. And then, hooray, your topic comes there. Another way to get research, a good research problem or a good research topic, is to attend seminars and conferences. When you attend seminars and conferences, new research ideas are propounded. And then you can pick from them those that suit your interests, and then you pursue them. Apart from that, I talked about journals earlier. When you read an academic journal, in a number of journals, authors are generous enough. Towards the last section or paragraph, they would often recommend future research opportunities. So you read there, so sometimes I just pick a paper, I jump straight to the bottom. What are the areas the author is suggesting that he couldn't address? And he's recommending that researchers can take that up in the future. So I can get research, good research questions from there. And in one of the topics that we are going to discuss will be research problem. And I think that will be next. When we finish with the ethics, we'll look at research problem definition and design. We'll go into what are the qualities of a good research topic. Okay. In some situations, research topic and research problem are used interchangeably. Because something that your research topic is your research problem. So if my research topic is determinants of income, that's my research problem. Because I'm trying to find out what determines one's level of what? Income. That's my research problem, but that's also my research topic. So we would look at what constitutes a good what? Research topic. What are the qualities, the characteristics of what? A good research topic. So I hope I've been able to help our friend in brief, but a lot of them will still go through them. So we are taking it step by step. Now that we are done with the research process, we'll look at the ethics. Ethics part. Part on what? The formulation stage. Then we move to execution. And then we move to analysis. Why? The analysis. But the thing is that it's supposed to provide the foundation for further exploration in research. So you can't get all the meat here. Okay? Because, so for instance, you can imagine that we have research methods for MSc, MBA. We have research methods for MPhil. We have research methods for what? PhD. So what would I teach here? What would I go and teach in MPhil? What would I go and teach in what? There are levels. In terms of how to go. We have to do, and I will narrow down. And as I indicated, you can have research methods that will focus only on practice. And we also have research methods that is only on the philosophy. So the patient is doing well with the philosophy of political science. Because I thought it had to talk, but that's before. So, God will be next week. We'll continue on our journey. Thank you.